Hi there, Tony DeWitt here, Missouri appellate attorney and a guy who likes to make the law make sense on YouTube. Today we're going to talk about something that sounds pretty dull, third-party practice, but I think we can spice it up. Let's head on down to the beach and talk about this. Well, hopefully one of the things that we can agree on is that nobody should ever be taken advantage of because of their youth or their gender. And we're going to be talking about a lawsuit that involves J.P. Morgan and a guy by the name of James Jess Staley, and how it relates to a certain financier who recently passed away in a jail in New York City. There was a rather high-profile trial regarding his administrative assistant, so to speak, who helped him do certain things that were against the law, and she received a fairly stiff sentence for that. I don't think I need to mention the fellow's name, but we all know what it is alleged that he did. And because YouTube does not like to endorse or in any way touch on that particular subject, I am not going to endorse or touch on that particular subject either, because I don't need to, because what I'm going to do is explain how third-party practice works in federal court and why it is a novel and useful tool for people who are trying to pursue somebody who did bad things. One of the things that frequently happens, particularly when in a situation such as the one that occurred with that particular financier, one of the things that frequently happens when things go south is that people start looking for other pots of money to go collect from. And that's important because what we have in this lawsuit is the United States as the governing body for the Virgin Islands going after J.P. Morgan Chase. And, you know, it's a little bit like the cop who pulls over a car because it's weaving from side to side in the road and going about 95 miles an hour. And when the cop walks up and knocks on the window, nobody answers, and he shines his flashlight in. There's nobody in the front seat, and there's everybody in the back. And somebody rolls down the window and says, "Yeah." And the person, the police officer says, "I need to speak to the person who was driving." And the person in the back seat says, "Nobody was driving. We were all in the back singing." It's kind of what's happened here. J.P. Morgan Chase said, we don't have any idea what was going on in that financier's life, and we didn't have any idea that he was involved in anything untoward. Why, we were just shocked to read that one of our bankers may have facilitated his conduct, and that there is, heavens to Betsy, an evidentiary trail that leads right back to him at the bank. And so, you know, we were shocked, we were appalled, we were taken by surprise. There's just no way for us to explain how terribly disappointed we are, because as everybody knows, we here in the banking industry, we hold people to a higher standard, because we had no idea, you shouldn't hold us liable. But if you do, we need to hold him liable. So what they have done, J.P. Morgan, is they have filed a lawsuit in what's called third-party practice. And basically what it does is it goes after their former employee. And it says, hey, guess what? If we're liable, you're liable. And of course, now that he is in the lawsuit, the government of the United States and the government of the Virgin Islands can go after him. as can another party called Jane Doe Number One. It is quite a common practice in federal and state courts when you have a notorious situation like this is to block out the actual names of the litigants. Now, in discovery, of course, the actual names of those litigants is provided to the parties, but they are not allowed to ever make reference to that person by name in the pleadings under pain of stiff sanction. Because the media, once it gets a whiff of that, will quite likely go after that individual to find out what their story is. And, you know, as a general rule, lawyers and judges especially don't like to have cases tried in the national media or even in the local media. So what happens is there is this hierarchy of complaint that's filed against JP Morgan, and then JP Morgan files a complaint against its former employee. And here's the front page of the complaint. You can see that it names JP Morgan Chase as the third-party plaintiff and James Edward Staley as the third-party defendant. And not only refers to him as the third-party defendant in the caption, it talks also about, in this third-party complaint, basically JPMC does not admit those allegations, denies all liability, and disputes both Doe's and USVI's right to recover under the law from JPMC. It then goes on to say, rather, if JPMC is responsible for any damages to Doe, it is entitled to recover the entire amount of any damages from Staley as indemnification or a percentage of those damages in contribution. JPMC also brings independent claims against Staley for breach of fiduciary duty and violation of the faithless servant doctrine. And I'd be happy to explain that if anybody has any interest in it. But that's the allegations, and of course, as I said, JP Morgan denies the liability. And likely in a few days, the government will file a complaint against that employee as well. And then discovery will commence. The discovery that will commence will be probably directed at emails, and there will be depositions, and there will be requests for production of information, requests for banking records, requests for records from the bank regarding this Mr. Staley, requests for records from Mr. Staley regarding the bank. What terms did you part company on? Why were you let go? Do you know? That kind of thing. All of that information will become relevant because if for any reason JP Morgan let him go because of his relationship with that particularly nasty financier, well, then that is going to make JP Morgan look pretty bad. And of course, you know, Mr. Staley could conceivably come in and say, hey, it wasn't me. I was just doing what I was told. Somebody at JP Morgan told me to do this nasty stuff. And so I did. And honest to goodness, I didn't enjoy a minute of it. So, you know, it all gets back to finger pointing. In a third-party complaint, you point your finger at somebody else that you think is more culpable than you are. And as I've always said, when you point your finger at someone else, there are three little piggies pointing right back at you. And that's what's going to happen with JP Morgan. That's what's going to happen with Staley. And it will be interesting to see how all of that shakes out. It's a civil lawsuit. There are no criminal claims involved. And as a result of that, it's unlikely that this case would ever wind up on court TV. And it's even more unlikely because it's filed in the Southern District of New York, which is basically in New York City. And the federal courts do not allow cameras in the courtroom. Those of you who remember the trial of the lady counterpart to the Financier, you will probably remember that the only thing that anybody had to show on television were the drawings from the people who were in the courtroom, who were drawing furiously to, you know, capture what was going on in the courtroom. It is an interesting setting, and it's an interesting case, and you can find the pleadings online. If you have a subscription to the Wall Street Journal online, you can find the article there online, and it has a link to the actual case that's been filed against Mr. Staley, as well as the Shazam, we didn't know complaint that contains all of the other information. You should certainly feel free to look that up if you would like. I'm not going to go into the details here, even though I do have a copy of the complaint, and I just think it's better if we don't get into that. I like to keep things family friendly, and I have to tell you, that entire episode is very disturbing to me on so many levels because there are so many things that we don't know about what went on. And again, I start from the proposition that no one, because of their age or their gender, should ever be taken advantage of in any way, but especially in the way that occurred there. Well, that's what I have for you today. It's not a whole lot, but again, we can't get into the details, and the details, while salacious, are not for us to discuss here. Hey folks, just a heads up here. I didn't have this when I first started making this, but information came out that JP Morgan is going to be required to produce documents, and particularly the documents of its CEO in the suit that is at issue here. And so I wanted to let everybody know that this was coming, and I thought you might enjoy. The video will be out tomorrow where we talk about apex witnesses. One of the things that I think helps make up for some of the bad things that go on in this world is when we have the opportunity, like I did today, to go grab a cart at the grocery store when it was out in the parking lot and headed for someone's car. I grabbed the cart and took it back to the young lady at Publix who was collecting the carts rather than make her walk all the way over. It's a small thing, right? But hopefully it made a difference in her day. If you have the opportunity to make a difference in someone else's day, please take that opportunity. It'll make you feel terrific. Have a terrific day, and thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors. And again, I appreciate you being here. We'll catch you on here down at the beach next time. If you like this video, here are a few others you might try, and don't forget to subscribe. Have a terrific day, guys.